A man on a bullhorn right now, leading the crowd in chants, say his name, George Floyd. They are hopeful here. The fact that this jury has come back fairly quickly after about 11 hours of deliberations is usually a good sign for the prosecution.
What are we seeing there?
Kalev, this is some of the damage from last week's rioting and the fires that took place. In some cases, entire blocks, as you can see here, were destroyed by the fires. The good news is the last couple of nights here in Minneapolis have been far more quiet.
There's a DJ out here right now, out here at City Hall, and right next to me is Bill Dalton. You are a Biden supporter. You know, you're a big guy. You've got your pit bull here right next to us, but I see you tearing up. Why?
A couple hours since Derek Chauvin was convicted in the murder of George Floyd, and there is jubilation out here at the spot where George Floyd died last year. It's now dubbed George Floyd Square, and thousands of people from around the city of all ages and races have come out here to celebrate.
Tell us a little bit more about how this funeral is going to take place.
Isabel, the most important attendant of all, just arrived. George Floyd himself arrived in the casket. You can see back there the hearse just pulled up. And this is a private funeral for George Floyd, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. It'll be live streamed across the world. And as you can see here, there's media from all over the world that have shown up as well.
But typically in cases like this, the judge will tell the jury to get back in there and get it done. And when juries are sequestered like this one, sealed off from their families and their cell phones, they tend to get it done. We'll be watching here in Minneapolis. I'm Andy Roesgen for Euronews.
They're leaving all kinds of things here. And, you know, even though all of these kind of look the same, all the flowers, there's a teddy bear there, the posters, the balloons, and each of these candles, they really do tell a story. Each one tells a story of the individual who thought enough to come up here today and last night to leave this. And that's the message that you're getting from a lot of people here.
Another noisy night of protesting here in Louisville, Kentucky, after that decision from the grand jury regarding Breonna Taylor. As you can see, there's been smoke set off here as these marchers march down the streets. Earlier, they marched along the city's riverfront here in Louisville, which is a highly popular tourist destination throughout the year, hundreds of them.
And I should be able to walk and do what I do without having to worry about the police trying to kill me every time I walk out the house.
Do you look at Breonna and think, you know, that could have been me?
Of course. I think it could be anybody, for real.
Now, these protests tonight have been mainly peaceful. There have been some blocking of traffic, but earlier there was a very tense confrontation between these protesters and members of a white armed militia group called the Oath Keepers, who they say were brought in to protect property. But there's a tense standoff as the two sides went nose to nose with each other. These were armed white militiamen. But in the end, the two sides broke up with no shots fired. What do you think of all this and the confrontation here?
I mean, people have the right to protest, you know, keep it peaceful, we'll keep it peaceful, and we're all good.
Now, in the meantime, we should note that the FBI is still investigating this case here in America and still yet might file charges against those officers, including civil rights charges in the Breonna Taylor case. In the meantime, these marches and protests continue on, although it is mainly peaceful for the night. We'll keep watching here in Louisville, Kentucky for Euronews. Philadelphia is waking up to one heck of a hangover today after yesterday's win by Joe Biden in the presidential election. It was like an all-day, all-night rave out here outside historic City Hall. People poured into the streets. They were cheering and singing, and they were dancing. Philadelphia is the home of the Declaration of Independence, signed in 1776, and these folks are keenly aware of that. And they wanted to be out here on the streets to say that they were here when Pennsylvania put Joe Biden over the top in the presidential race. Now, there were some Donald Trump supporters out here, a handful of them, still at the building where they're counting votes right now, but they mainly kept to themselves. And afterwards, I asked some Trump supporters and some Biden supporters, what happens now?
Myself being somebody further left than Joe Biden, I need to push harder on dealing with the police. Disarming the police is something I like. Abolishing ICE. I like him to deal with homelessness on a much better level instead of just letting people be without homes in this country, let them be fed.
I mean, what do Trump supporters do?
Reorganize. The left's been doing for the last 4 years.
What's that?
The same thing the left has been doing for 4 years.
Which is?
Mayhem.
We're going to show up wherever Biden shows up, not our president.
That's what the mantra is going to be here.
Oh, yeah, not our president.
The Trump campaign had a team of lawyers here in Philadelphia on Saturday, led by former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. They're promising fresh litigation starting on Monday regarding hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast here in Philadelphia. But for the moment, it's a pretty safe bet that this horse that has guarded City Hall here for 2 centuries has never seen anything quite like this. Andy Roesgen in Philadelphia for Euronews. His name is Roz, and he doesn't want you to see his face because, as a former interpreter for the U.S. Marines in Afghanistan, he's terrified of what the Taliban might do to his extended family back home.
I'm really scared if somebody snitch on them to the Taliban, and as soon as the Taliban find out, and they will kill them all.
But if you could see his face, you'd see a huge smile of relief, at least for the moment. His wife and son, who spent 3 harrowing nights here outside the airport in Kabul, are now in Qatar, and they've just received approval to join him in the U.S.
I'm so excited for my son and my wife to be here.
These days, Roz is a truck driver. He got out of Afghanistan in 2015 because even then he knew a Taliban takeover was inevitable. But he made trips back to visit his childhood sweetheart. They got married, had a son, and the 2 of them were on track to join him in America. But the stunningly swift takeover of Kabul caught everyone off guard.
I was really scared, I was really shocked, and I didn't know how I should bring them here. And then I was really, my whole body was shaking, and I was just crying. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat.
Desperate, Roz reached out to the Marines he had worked with. He calls them his brothers. His wife and son were initially blocked from entering the Kabul airport for 3 days by both Afghan security forces and the Taliban. But then his Marine brothers called to say they got his family through the gate.
I got your son and your wife, they are safe now. And then I was so happy at that moment, and I was, oh, thanks God.
Roz doesn't know yet when or where his wife and son will arrive in America. It might happen here, a couple hours from Roz's home at Fort McCoy, a U.S. military base in a rural, wooded part of western Wisconsin.
That will be so awesome when they get here. She's a really great mom. I'm really proud of her. I'm so excited for my son get here, and he's so lovely, he's so handsome.
Temporary tents are going up at Fort McCoy as thousands of refugees begin to stream in. Local social service agencies are helping to arrange food, housing, and help refugees search for employment. Conservative critics have questioned the vetting of these Afghan refugees.
Refugees are vetted more than anybody else. There are 6 federal agencies that you have to go through. So we owe it to them to protect them because they've been doing that for our military for 2 decades now.
Just like Roz did. But right now, reuniting with his family is all that matters. Andy Roesgen, TRT World, Rockford, Illinois. Calls for an end to violence in Chicago after 2 children were shot over the weekend. And Chicago Mayor Lightfoot releases the 2023 budget, urging City Council to be bold, in her words. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Andy Roesgen. The mayor finished delivering a re-election budget that emphasizes the good news, and our political editor, Mike Flannery, joins us now with more. Mike? All right, thanks, Mike. Now to the aftermath of Hurricane Ian and the death toll up to 80. Video shot this weekend shows the extensive damage to Fort Myers Beach after that hurricane hit last week. People are still evacuating because the island will be without power or water for a while. This video shows the Lee County Sheriff's Office conducting search and rescue on Saturday as survivors share horror stories about riding out the storm. And this is what led to some of those outages. A transformer exploded in Lakeland, Florida, and that took firefighters days just to put out the fire. Officials say it could take up to 2.5 years to have a new transformer built. And there's also concern that as rivers and lakes overflow, there could be even more flooding. Lauren Blanchard has that part of the story. And the storm isn't done yet. Remnants of the storm are still drenching parts of the East Coast. Heavy rains flooded parts of New Jersey. This video shows Stone Harbor, and rain is expected to continue across the area until tomorrow. Meteorologist Caitlin Cody joins us now with our first look at the forecast, starting with those remnants. Caitlin? All right, thanks, Caitlin. Well, you'll want to brace for some more traffic delays on the south side. The streets around the proposed Obama Center are going through another construction phase, and Joni Lum has that story. Chicago police are investigating the sexual assault of a 15-year-old girl near the campus of DePaul College Prep. Police say it happened on Friday night. The girl was allegedly drugged with an unknown substance in a cup of water and then taken to a wooded area off North Rockwell Street in Avondale. No one is in custody at this point. The Bears' potential move to Arlington Heights will top an agenda of the Village Board meeting today. Trustees are expected to reject a petition that would prohibit using any public money for that development. The group pushing for the petition is trying to get a measure against using any public money onto the ballot as a referendum for local voters, but they need board approval. However, they could get it on the ballot without approval if they get 7,000 signatures. Now, White Sox manager Tony La Russa expected to officially announce his retirement today. La Russa has been out since August 30th because of some heart issues. He's done 2 stints with the Sox, one in the 1980s, and he had 1 year left on his contract. Despite all those high hopes at the start of the season, the Sox failed to make the playoffs this year. Mark Carman told Scott Schneider this morning that there's plenty of blame to go around for the Sox not realizing those World Series dreams. Well, we've got a lot more to come for you here on Fox 32 News. At noon, the Supreme Court opens a new term today with new cases and perhaps some new controversy. Mike Emanuel in Washington has more on what to expect. Also outrageous and incredibly offensive. A high school football team has their season canceled after acting out a slave auction. And an out-of-line baseball fan kicked out of a game after taking a swing at an usher. Plus, at the Museum of Ice Cream in Chicago, trying to hit a hole-in-one here with their big ice cream experience. And we'll talk more about that when we come back. Jury selection began today for the man charged with killing 6 people during a parade in Waukesha. Darrell Brooks is facing more than 70 charges, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. He'll represent himself, and that means he gets the chance to cross-examine victims, police officers, and anyone else who testifies. If he's convicted on any of the counts, Brooks would face a mandatory life sentence. A high school football team in California is benched after a video surfaces showing players acting out a slave auction. The superintendent says the football team has forfeited this week's game and players involved will not be playing the rest of the season. As a result, the varsity team season is over now because of a lack of players. A Washington firefighter is accused of punching and biting an usher during a Nationals baseball game. Video shows 2 ushers talking to this man as fans in the crowd call for him to be thrown out, and whoops, there he goes. You can see he's not only out of there for that game, he's been banned entirely from the stadium for 5 years. Kim Kardashian agrees to pay more than $1 million to settle a case with the SEC. She was charged by the SEC for promoting a cryptocurrency on her social media without disclosing that she was being paid by the company. Kardashian's post included a link to the company's website for potential investors. In addition to the fine, Kardashian has agreed not to promote any crypto assets for 3 years. Well, getting around downtown Chicago this week could be pretty tricky. We'll have Marathon Street closures coming up. Opening statements began this morning against the founder of the Oath Keepers and 4 others. They're facing the most serious charges yet related to the Capitol attack. Stuart Rhodes and the others are charged with seditious conspiracy. Prosecutors said in court today that the Oath Keepers conducted an armed rebellion to stop the transfer of power by, quote, any means necessary. Attorneys for Rhodes say he did nothing illegal and that the government's case is completely wrong. The Oath Keepers face up to 20 years behind bars. Well, this Sunday marks the day that so many runners have been training for months. It's Chicago Marathon time, and lane closures also start today. Balbo from Columbus to Lakeshore Drive, DeSable Lakeshore Drive closes at 10 a.m. this morning, and it won't reopen until next Wednesday. So let's take a peek at what kind of weather we might expect for the marathon. Caitlin, what are you seeing out there? All right. Thanks a lot, Caitlin. And that'll do it for us on this hour. We'll see you back here for Fox 32 News at 4 o'clock. Thanks for joining us.